All right, this is the Chapter 6 test review from Go Math for 4th grade. For numbers 1a through 1d, tell whether the fractions are equivalent by selecting the correct symbol. So when you're checking to see if they're equivalent, I want you to figure out which denominator is the biggest. So in this case, 16 is the biggest denominator. So I'm going to see if there's anything I can multiply 4 by to make 16. Well, I know that I can multiply by 4. So to check to see if it is equivalent, if I multiply 4 times 4, I get 16. 1 times 4, I get 4. So yes, these are equivalent. On B, I have 5 and 15. 15 is larger, so I'm going to multiply 5 by 3 because 3 times 5 makes 15. So if I do 3 times 3, that is 9 fifteenths. So that is not equal. On C, 30 is my biggest denominator. So I know I can do 6 times 5 to get 30. 5 times 5 is 25. So yes, that is equal. And on this one, 10 is the bigger denominator, but there's nothing I can multiply 8 by to make 10. So these are not equivalent. All right, on number 2, Juan's mother gave him a recipe for trail mix. We have 3/4 of a cup of cereal, 1/4 of a cup of peanuts, 2/3 of a cup of almonds, and 1/2 a cup of raisins. And I want to put these from least to greatest. So the easiest way to do least to greatest is to just make them all common denominators. So if I go by my 4s, 4, 8, 12, I can see that my common denominator is going to be 12 because 4 can go into 12, 3 can go into 12, and 2 can go into 12. So in order to get 3/4 into 12ths, I have to multiply by 3, and I need to do the same thing on the top. So 3/4 is equal to 9/12. Then I have 1/4, and again I'm going to multiply that by 3 because 4 times 3 is 12. 1 times 3 is 3. So 1/4 is equal to 3/12. For 2/3 to get into 12ths, I have to multiply by 4 because 3 times 4 is 12. So 2 times 4 is 8. 2/3 is equal to 8/12. And for 1/2, I know that I'm going to multiply by 6. So 1 times 6 is 6. So now, when you're doing this, also pay really close attention to whether it tells you least to greatest or greatest to least. So I can see that my least is the peanuts, which is 1/4. So that one's done. Then my next smallest is 1/2. Then my next smallest is 2/3. And then that leaves my largest as 3/4. And you're going to want to make sure you put the original fraction in here instead of the common denominator fraction, or it will mark it wrong. I'll still know that it's correct, so I can still fix it. But just for the automatic grading, it'll be looking for the original fractions. All right, Taylor cuts 1/5 sheet of construction paper for an arts and crafts project. Write 1/5 as equivalent fractions with the denominators shown. So to get from 5 to 10, I multiply by 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. To get to 15, I multiply by 3. So 1 times 3 is 3. To get to 25, I have to multiply by 5. So 1 times 5 is 5. And to get to 40, I have to multiply by 8. So 1 times 8 is 8. Just make sure whatever you have to do to the denominator, you do the same thing to the numerator. All right, so the next one, a mechanic has sockets with the sizes shown below. Write each fraction in the correct box. So any that are less than half, equal to half, or greater than half. So I know that half in fourths is 2/4, so 1/4 would be less than half. I know that 4/8, 4 is half of 8, so I know that 4/8 is equal to 1/2. I know that 4/8 is half, so that means 7/8 is greater than half. And that also means that 3/8 is less than half. Okay, now in 16ths, half of 16 is 8. So 3/16 would be less than half. And 11/16 would be more than half. Now, there are some boxes that are empty. That's okay. It does that just to see if you really understand. It doesn't necessarily mean that all the boxes will be filled in. All right, on to the next ones. Number 5, Darcy bought half a pound of cheese and 3/4 of a pound of hamburger for a barbecue. Use the numbers to compare the amounts of cheese and hamburger Darcy bought. So again, when we're comparing, we want to make common denominators. So in 1/2 and 3/4, I know my common denominator is going to be 4. So I have to multiply by 2 here and by 2 here. 1 times 2 is 2. So that means that 1/2 is less than 3/4. All right, Brad is practicing the piano. He spends 1/4 an hour practicing scales and 1/3 practicing the song for his recital. We're answering yes or no on these. So 12 is a common denominator of 4/4 and 1/3. So 1/4 and 1/3. 12 would be a common denominator because 4 and 3 can both go into 12. The amount of time spent practicing scales can be rewritten as 3/12. So scales was 1/4. So if I turn that into 12ths, I know I have to multiply 4 times 3 to make 12. And 1 times 3 is 3. So yes, that is true. The amount of time spent practicing the song for the recital can be rewritten as 6/12. So practicing the song, we did 1/3. And we want to turn it into 12ths, which means I'm going to multiply by 4. 1 times 4 is 4. So 4/12 is not 6/12, so that's a no. In the school chorus, 4/24 of the students are 4th graders. In simplest form, what fraction of the students in the school chorus are 4th graders? So I want to simplify this. So I need to see what I can divide both of these numbers by. Well, I know that 4 does go into 24, so I'm going to divide them both by 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 24 divided by 4 is 6. And since we have 1 on the numerator, 1 is prime, so I know that's as far as I can go. All right, this is just like on the first problem. Which pairs of fractions are equivalent? Mark all that apply. So again, you want to look for the largest fraction, denominator, and see if you can turn this other fraction into that denominator. So 3 times 4 is 12, and 4 times 2 is 8, so that is 8/12. That one is equivalent. 4 times 7 does make 28, so 3 times 7 is 21. So this one would actually be 21/28. That is not correct. 5 can't be multiplied by anything to get 16, so we know that one's automatically out. And in order to get from 10 to 30, I have to multiply by 3. 3 times 7 is 21, so 21/30 is equal to 21/30. So those two are correct. Sam worked on his science fair project for 1/4 of an hour on Friday and 1/2 an hour on Saturday. What are 4 common denominators for the fractions? So what you're doing essentially is just figuring out what are 4 denominators we could have. So we're going to list the multiples of our larger denominator. So we have 4, well that's 1, 4 can go in, be divided by 2. 8 can be divided by 2. 12 can be divided by 2. And 16 can be divided by 2. So really any number that is divisible by 4 and by 2 can be on this. So I can say they are divisible by 2 and 4. Okay, next problem, question 10. Marita works in a florist shop and makes flower arrangements. She puts 10 flowers in each vase. 2/10 of the flowers are daisies. That means she has 10 total. 2 of them are daisies. If she makes 4 arrangements, so that means I would multiply this by 4. How many daisies does she need? Because this is just one arrangement. We're making equivalent fractions. So 2/10 is 1. We're going to multiply it by 4. That's 8/40. That means out of 4 arrangements, she's going to need a total of 8 daisies. Okay, part B, last weekend Marita uses 10 daisies. So now we have 2/10, and I want to make it equal to 10 somethings. And I don't know what my denominator is. So I need to figure out what I multiply 2 by to make 10. Well, I know that 2 times 5 is 10. And since I'm making equivalent fractions, I do the same thing to my denominator. 10 times 5 is 50. So how many flowers other than daisies did she use to make the arrangements? Well, here's the tricky part. It's not just 50. 50 is the total amount of flowers. 10 of them are daisies. It wants to know the other flowers. So I have 50 total minus 10 daisies equals 40 other flowers. Okay, number 11. In Mary's homeroom, 10/28 of the students have a cat, 6/12 have a dog, and 2/14 have a pet bird. In simplest form, 5/14 of the students have a cat. Well, to check that, we're going to do 10/28. I know I can divide both of those by 2. And that gives me 5/14. 5 is prime, so it is, in simplest form, it is the answer they gave us, so that is true. Okay, the next one, in simplest form, 2/4 of the students have a dog. Well, dogs were 6/12. Simplest form, so it means I'm going to reduce. I can divide both of these numbers by 6, and that gives me 1/2. So 2/4 is not quite simplest form. And in simplest form, 1/7 of the students have a pet bird. So I have 2/14 is the number I was given. To make that simplest form, I'm going to see that I can divide both of those numbers by 2. So I have 2 divided by 2 is 1. 14 divided by 2 is 7. Yes, that is in simplest form, and yes, that's the answer we got. Okay, question 12. Regina, Courtney, and Ellen hiked around Bear Pond. Regina hiked 7/10 of the distance in an hour. Courtney hiked 3/6 of the distance in an hour. Ellen hiked 3/8 of the distance in an hour. Compare the distances hiked by each person by matching the statements to the correct symbol. So we're just comparing these fractions. Well, I know that the common denominator on 10 and 6 would be 30. So if I want to make this one 30ths, 6 times 5 is 30. 3 times 5 is 15. Multiply this side by 3, and that would give me 21/30. So 21/30 is greater than 15/30. The common denominator on 8s and 6s is going to be 24. So I'm going to multiply by 3 on this side, which gives me 9/24, and by 4 on this side, which gives me 12/24. So 9/24 is less than 12/24. And this should be the correct answer, but it says each symbol may be used more than once or not at all. So don't always just jump the gun and say, oh, this is the right one. We have to check it. We are so used to doing that, but you have to check them. So on these, my common denominator is going to be 40ths. So 7/10 equals 40ths. I multiply by 4. So 7 times 4 is 28. Over here, I multiply by 5. So that's 15/40. 28/40 is greater than 15/40. So you can see it doesn't always pay to just assume that the third one is automatically right, okay? All right, number 13, Ramon is having some friends over for a baseball game. Ramon's job is to make a vegetable dip. The ingredients for the recipe are given. So here's all the ingredients, Part A says, which ingredient does Ramon use the greater amount of? Buttermilk or cream cheese? Well, buttermilk is 5/8. Cream cheese is 1/2. And I know that in eighths, half of 8 is 4. So 4/8 is half, which means I know this one is more than half. So I know that 5/8 is more, which means the buttermilk is a greater amount. Part B, he says he needs the same amount of 2 ingredients. Is he correct? So that means it's saying 2 of these are equivalent fractions. We have to figure out which ones. Well, I know that I can turn fourths into eighths and halves into eighths. So let's check these first. So to turn the 3/4 into eighths, I'm going to multiply by 2. 2 times 3 is 6. So that's 6/8. And oh, look, we already have a common equivalent fraction, parsley and scallions. So yes, he is going to have parsley and scallions that have the same amount of ingredients. All right, the next one. Sandy is ordering bread rolls for her party. She wants 3/5 of the rolls to be whole wheat. So here's the drawing showing 3/5. What other fractions can represent the part of the rolls that will be whole wheat? So in order to get from 5 to 25, I multiply by 5. So 3 times 5 is 15. And to draw that, the easiest way is to start with your 3/5 that were already made. And then I'm going to cut it in fifths going the other way. So I'm going to try and make them as accurate as possible. So now, since they were cut horizontally the first time, I cut them vertically the second time, and that made it into 15 25ths. So now I can make up any other number that is equal to 3/5. So I'm going to take the easiest one, which is to multiply by 2 and get 6/10. So again, to do that, I'm going to start by copying the 3/5 that were already given to me. And I'm just going to cut it into 2 equal pieces going this way. So now I have 6 out of 10 pieces. All right, Angel has 4/8 yard of ribbon and Lynn has 3/4 yard of ribbon. Do Angel and Lynn have the same amount of ribbon? Shade the model to show how you found your answer. So Angel's is 4/8. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4/8. Lynn has 3/4. So there's 1, 2, 3. I can see that they do not have the same amount, and I can see that Lynn has more. All right, the next question. Ella used 1/4 yard of red ribbon. Fill in each box with a number from the list to show equivalent fractions for 1/4. So where I know the denominator, 4 times 2 equals 8. So 1 times 2 is 2. And then to get from 2 to 4, I can multiply by 2. So that means I multiply by 2 here. 8 times 2 is 16. And then you can make up another fraction here. Now I'm just going to cross these out. I don't particularly love to use these. You don't have to use these if you don't want to. I personally just like to use my common knowledge. So that's, I multiply by 2 here, multiply by 4 here. I'm going to multiply it by 3. So 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 4 is 12. 3/12 is also equal to 4/16, 2/8, and 1/4. All right, last page. Number 17. Frank has 2 same-sized rectangles divided into the same number of equal parts. One rectangle has 3/4. The other has 1/3. Into how many parts could each rectangle be divided? So we have to make sure we have a common denominator. So in 3s and 4s, I know my common denominator is 12. So I'm going to start by cutting this one into thirds. And I'm going to cut this one into fourths going the other way. That way I can easily cut them the same. Okay. So 3/4. So I had 1, 2, 3 out of my 4. And 1/3 is 1 out of my 3 pieces. So it can be cut into 12 equal pieces. Is there more than one possible answer to part A? If so, did you find the least number of parts into which both could be divided? So yes, there is more than one answer. We could go 12, and then we could go to 24, and then we could just list our multiples of 12 and they would all work. So any multiple of 12. But we did get the least common denominator because 12 is the first number that 3 and 4 can both go into. Okay, last question. Suki rode her bike 4/5 of a mile. Claire rode her bike 1/3 of a mile. They want to compare how far they rode their bikes using the benchmark 1/2. For numbers 18A through 18C, select the correct. Okay. Compare Suki's distance to the benchmark 1/2. So 4/5 is more than 1/2, and I know that because I could turn these into tenths. So by multiplying this by 2, that would be 8/10, and 5/10 is 1/2. So I know that 4/5 is greater than 1/2. On these, I could find a common denominator, which would be 6. So 3 times 2 is 6, 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 3 is 6, so 3/6. So I know that 1/3 is less than 1/2. Knowing this, I know that Suki rode her bike a longer distance than Claire because hers is more than half and Claire's was less than half. That is our Chapter 12 test review. If you want some more review, you can refer to the IXL that were given for this week with the extra review. Have a great time. If you have any questions, please reach out to me.